You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. This is 12 Newsmakers.
They want change. But every time you make a change, there's always somebody vested in the old way. And so this budget has a number of changes, and I expect those changes to be contested and debated.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. Like all government units, the extended economic slump has depressed tax revenues and put a strain on the budget of the city of Cincinnati. In addition, this is the first budget developed by the newly enhanced mayor's office, currently occupied by Charlie Lucan, and the newly appointed city manager, Valerie Lemmy. Although the shortfall facing the city is about $35 million, the mayor and the manager insist that the proposed 2003-2004 budget doesn't reflect a crisis, but simply an opportunity to focus the city's energies. Highlights of the proposed budget include some cuts, like the elimination of the planning department and a proposal to cut the nature education program offered through the Cincinnati Park Board. But it also includes full funding for many human service functions of the city, including the city's health centers and private agencies supported by the city, such as Tender Mercies. And the budget even includes significant new funding to build the number of police on city streets and to increase city support of the arts and cultural organizations. Since the budget was introduced, 3 public hearings have been held. I attended the one in Bond Hill on Wednesday night, where nearly 200 people packed the recreation center to comment on the proposals in the budget. With the recommendations of the mayor and the city manager as the foundation, informed by public comment, it is now up to council to refine and adopt the budget this coming week. To discuss the critical elements of that process, I am joined this morning by John Cranley, the chair of the Finance Committee, and by Pat DeWine, the ranking minority member of the committee. Almost sounds like Congress, Pat. I don't know if you're the ranking minority.
There's only 2 of us, so.
So anyway, welcome back to Newsmakers for both of you. Let's be clear, there have already been some adjustments based on comments by the community. This is an example where the community comment has changed things. For example, neighborhood support program was going to be cut from $10,000 for every community to $5,000. Am I correct? That has now changed?
Yeah, this goes to support our wonderful community councils who do a lot of great grassroots work and effort on all 52 communities. And the administration was proposing that they be cut in half, and we disagree with that. So that is one adjustment that we are making.
So we go back up to 10,000?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else based on community comment that has changed?
I think that the mayor and city manager are proposing some changes in regards to park funding because some people were upset about that.
The nature education part of it?
I think more the maintenance part of it.
The maintenance part.
Right.
With the nature education part, am I correct? Is this basically the city saying, we're going to pull this out, not in 2003, but in 2004, and we're going to use 2003 to negotiate with the Hamilton County Park District to get some money into the city parks? Is that fair?
Well, I think that's part of it. Certainly, people in the city pay taxes to Hamilton County Park District. The Hamilton County Park District hasn't done anything in the city, and we'd like to see them do that. The other part of that is, the park board really ought to go out and try to find some alternative funding for some of these programs, and they also ought to look at their own budgets. The city hired a consultant last year who did some analysis and found that there are hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings in the park within the parks budget. Actually, almost $1 million of savings in the parks budget based on managed competition. I think the park board should go out and do what the consultant that we've paid for has suggested and implement managed competition. And then they could restore some of these programs.
Then they could use that money to restore the nature education. Let's talk about one of the big ones, the one that I heard a lot on Wednesday night in Bond Hill, and that is the elimination of the planning department. Now, as a historian, Cincinnati has been famous in the 20th century for its commitment to good planning. One of the first city plans in 1925, any place in the United States, 1948 Metropolitan Master Plan, plans throughout the 60s and 70s. Why the elimination of this department, John?
Well, as a historian, you'll also know that for the last 3 decades, the city has lost 10% of its population again and again and again. Something is not right in the hen house. And what we are doing is really progressing forward and making economic development better and brighter. As I point out all the time, we've got a major top-heavy bureaucracy. We have over 600 people who make $60 grand a year. We have less than 6 street sweepers. I get a call every day by someone who says, I remember when the trucks used to come down my street more often. I live close to Cheviot, and I see those trucks. Why aren't they on our city? We have to reprioritize. If we focus on basic services, cleanliness, safety, and we
But what happens to planning, which is the long-term view?
The planning function will be combined with the community development department, and it'll be part of, wedded to the economic incentives available to the city. Right now, planning is some separate department that comes up with pie-in-the-sky ideas with no money available to it, no commitment from the private sector, no commitment even of city dollars. So we raise expectations of neighborhoods throughout the city with these fancy neighborhood plans, but there's no execution strategy. Now, we won't invent plans we can't follow through on. They will be connected directly to the economic incentives the city has available to it.
Pat, do you agree with the cut of the planning department?
I do. What the city has done economic development-wise has not worked. It has not worked for a long time. This independent, separate planning department, which becomes another roadblock for people to go through, has been one part of the problem. We need to integrate that. We're not getting rid of planning. What we're doing is we're integrating with our economic development function. Too often we have departments fighting amongst themselves, and nothing ever gets done. And people throw up their hands and say, we'd rather go do business somewhere else. And that's why, if you look around the city of Cincinnati, most of the new development is paid for by your tax dollars.
But if you remove the planning as its own function and integrate it, as you say, with all these others, is there also a chance that we're going to lose the commitment to trying to take the long range rather than fix the problem with planning?
Well, I think the long range, if you take a 30-year long range, isn't very good. It's not a very healthy sign for the city. One of my heroes, FDR, was willing to experiment. We have to constantly experiment. As the mayor said, people say change, 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 change. We say it's crazy to have a bifurcated economic development department, one over here, that aren't even connected. Let me say, to put this issue to rest, we are not ending planning in the city. We are merely integrating it, and the functions will be combined with the economic development tools that are available.
And we will monitor how well that works?
Absolutely.
See whether it needs to be
I think the
reestablished.
proof will be in the pudding. The proof is, can we reverse the population loss? Can we reverse the loss of investment in the city?
Pat, one of the things that you've talked about consistently over your term on council is managed competition. Right. And we know from a recent report that even though that's been recommended, been approved, not much has happened. Will that change under this budget?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I'm extremely disappointed under the current administration, mayor, council. Council approved managed competition a year ago. It approved for 4 services. Not one of those things has been done yet.
Isn't street cleaning one of the areas?
Street cleaning. Finally, almost a year after council approved doing it, we finally got the RFP. And part of that is council members who intervened in the process, tried to slow it down. Part of it's administration that doesn't seem very committed to doing this stuff.
John, what about that? Under this budget, is council going to follow through on trying to do some managed competition?
Absolutely. Like I said before, we have to change and do things differently. And I think some of the cardinal virtues of American life are choice and competition. And I believe in our city workers, and I think we put them up in competition. They may do pretty well. Sometimes they may lose, sometimes they may win.
So street cleaning?
Street cleaning, fleet services, convention center services. I personally think we should get out of the computer business. We have over 70 people who work in our computer department, and my computer never works. And when I worked at Taft, the law firm, my computer never failed. So I think things like that.
I mean, it's insane that we live in a city where the city maintains and pays for 17 gas stations, where the city installs its own fiber optic lines. I mean, all of these things that can be done much more efficiently by the private sector. City bureaucrats insist on doing themselves because they don't want to give up the turf. And
it's going to be whose responsibility to finally push that through? Is it council? You've already spoken, as you say, a year ago. Or is it the manager? Who's really holding this up? Is it the manager? Is it the mayor's office? Is it grassroots bureaucrats? Who's holding it up?
I think it's a combination of all those things. Certainly the city manager's office. I mean, we had a change of managers, but even since the new manager's been there, they have not been aggressive about doing this stuff. They have stalled and delayed and stalled, and at times some council members have intervened who are against managed competition have been allowed to intervene in the process and slow things down even more.
Okay, I apologize for the fly that's in here. It's just distracting all of us. Well, I might as well recognize the obvious and kill it if you can. Another thing that's being eliminated is the Office of Environmental Management. In a city that has such a smog problem, how do we justify the elimination of that office?
It's a duplicative service. The county the state, and the federal government provide every service that that office provides. It is just not a basic service that we can provide when other governments are providing it who have more resources than we do. But I will say this, I am committed to making sure that we maintain recycling in this budget. It is proposed for a cut, and I am...
It's proposed for a cut in 2004, right?
Exactly, and I am going to make sure that we put it to bed now, that we have recycling be maintained as a city service.
Why is the proposal there to end recycling? Have we lost our commitment to recycling?
Well, I was really disappointed to see that as well. I think most people in the city think recycling is important and want recycling. The commitment really comes from an unwillingness from the mayor and the city manager to further cut the bureaucracy and to fully implement managed competition. The consultant the city manager selected had identified over $8.5 million annually in savings we could have if we implement this process. More than enough to pay for recycling, add more police officers, and do lots of other wonderful things.
Speaking of police officers, I want to run a little bit of a soundbite from the mayor announcing talking about some changes with the police force in this budget. Let's listen to this.
The issue is police visibility. And by that I mean we're adding police, we're increasing the amount of police overtime for police visibility, and we're hoping that citizens and police will be working together in a more visible fashion to fight crime, which is a scourge. I mean, you cannot sugarcoat the crime problem in Cincinnati today. It is obviously part of a national phenom, but that's no excuse. And we have got to get more serious about the business of fighting crime, and we're putting our money where our mouth is.
John, in this budget, as I understand it, in 2003 and 2004, we'll increase 60 police and then another 15 in the year after that. Am I correct?
That's
so
right.
The commitment is to a total of 75 new.
Right.
Plus additional overtime pay so that police who are already on the force can be back on the street more often, so there's more visibility. That's what the mayor was talking about. Am I correct on that? Increase of 75? What's the standard here? Well, I mean, what will that bring us up to, and why that number versus any other number?
Well, there's always amount of guesswork. You know, back in 1980, the force was about 1,100, and it was reduced to about 1,000 over the last 20 years. And this will ultimately take it back to 1,075. Jerry Brown.
But at the same time, you talked about the great decline in population.
Right, but in this, population's irrelevant. What's relevant are crime statistics, and they're getting a lot worse.
Well, only in the most recent year cycle, but the long-term trend has been down.
Well, the bottom line is that it was my idea to propose that we increase the police force by 75. I think it's the best decision I've made on City Council, the best proposal I've come up with. Jerry Brown, the liberal mayor of Oakland, is adding 200 cops. John Norquist, the Democratic mayor of Milwaukee, has added over 150 over the last couple of years. David Dinkins and Giuliani added thousands of police officers. Every single day, I get a call from someone who had a crime problem, and it used to just be in Over the Rhine. Now I get the call from Price Hill, I get the call from Madisonville, I get the call from College Hill, and people love this city, but no one is going to jeopardize them and themselves and their family if they feel unsafe. And I think, really, again, as the mayor said when he announced this budget, planners or police. I mean, I think we have to get back to basics because we have so many natural assets. If we do the basics right, nobody can compete with us.
Any problem with this figure from your perspective?
Well, I mean, I think we need more police officers.
More than the 75?
I think we should keep adding police officers. That's what we need to do. I mean, I think the number one priority of the city has to be to have a safe city. And I think we need to go out and aggressively enforce the law. I think.
We're taping on Friday morning. This will be shown on Sunday, but we're taping on Friday morning. As I understand it, yesterday, on Thursday, the police FOP approved a new contract. Am I correct that that's a 5% raise for each of the next 2 years?
That is correct.
Please?
Yes.
And so that's 10% over this 2-year biennium budget. Is that out of line with any other department?
No. In fact, right now, Cincinnati police are 15th in the pay scale in the region, and this will go a long way to remedy that deficiency. But you can't tell me that the cop in Indian Hill and the cop in Sycamore Township and the cop up in Mason is working harder and dealing with more crime and more problem than ours. And if there's anything that the police deserve, it's to be comparably paid to other police forces in the region. But 25 years ago, the police were number 2 behind, I think, Indian Hill. Now we're 15th.
Okay. So increased numbers, higher pay. My understanding is, too, that in that contract, the police have stepped back somewhat from the arbitration process so that we're not going to run into this situation constantly of having police fired and then brought back on?
Well, I think it does maintain the arbitration process. I think there are some changes to that should be a little better for the city.
Okay. One other area that I want to pick up on that's sort of new funding, and I want to, again, listen to the mayor, and that's in the area of cultural and arts investments. So let's listen to what the mayor had to say.
The arts are something that are within several blocks, mostly, of downtown. They are uniquely Cincinnati. They bring hundreds of thousands of people to our town, to our downtown, to over the Rhine, to the Art Museum and other places. We have a story to tell here about the arts in Cincinnati. The city must step up and be a partner in that story. Other cities are doing it, and frankly, other cities are doing it that don't hold a candle to the quality of arts that we have in the city of Cincinnati.
Okay. Traditionally, up until this budget, since the city's been investing about $700,000 a year. The manager proposed another $1.3 million to bring it to $2 million. Charlie topped that to $2.7 million. So we're basically adding $2 million. How's that extra $2 million going to be spent?
It's going to be spent in a variety of ways, but primarily what we hope to do is to leverage that money to get private sector matches, to create the kinds of urban spaces that are popular for urban pioneers, for people to come back, move back to the city. I mean, as the mayor said, this is the advantage the city has over the suburbs, and we have to create safe and clean spaces that people can perform the arts and enjoy the arts.
Pat, we're almost out of time, but what's your reaction to this kind of new commitment?
Well, I think that the capital expenditures in the arts can make sense. It's one thing that it's a good investment that brings people downtown. I think we ought to be looking more to things that we can do uniquely like the arts than doing some of the cookie cutter things like stadiums and that people want to do.
Okay. And you're talking about bringing things into line. This city has been way out of line with almost every other major city in terms of arts funding.
That's right.
So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank
you.
The
vote comes on Wednesday, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, we will be watching to see what other adjustments. Stay tuned. After the break, a new book about amusement parks in Cincinnati designed to stir fond memories and warm people up in the midst of a cold winter. Welcome back. For people of my generation, some of our crispest childhood memories are of excursions to Coney Island. Our parents and grandparents, however, talked not just about Coney, but about Chester Park and the Ludlow Lagoon. A new book released just in time for Christmas, Giving, focuses on amusement parks in Cincinnati and northern Kentucky, and that's the title. I am joined this morning by the author, Bob Wimberg, who has also written about Cincinnati breweries and the city during the Civil War. Bob, welcome to Newsmakers.
Hi, nice to see you again.
What's the heyday of amusement parks in this area?
Well, I would say there's two. I would say at the turn of the century, before World War I, and then a different kind of park in the 1960s, in the late 50s to mid-1960s.
What was the character of that early period, of the turn of the century period?
Well, you could almost divide the history of amusement parks into two. The first part is vaudeville, famous bands, military-style bands, band music, march music, and live entertainment. And then the second half is rides, a concentration on rides, all
and
different
that's
kinds
that
of
50s,
rides.
60s?
That's the 50s, 60s.
And that's really that Coney Island of my childhood.
Coney Island, yeah, and of mine.
Yeah.
Because when I started, I was going to concentrate on rides. And then I realized that the earlier parks, although they had rides, they had roller coasters, merry-go-rounds, Ferris wheels, they actually concentrated more on live entertainment.
One of the things that, and we were just talking about this, if the cover of this book is very confusing when I first looked at it, because obviously it has something to do with the suspension bridge, but it's got Ferris wheels, it's got a second story. Where'd you find, is this real? Where'd you find this?
Yes, it was a drawing for a proposal in the 1899 Commercial Tribune newspaper. The Commercial Tribune used to be one of the newspapers in town. And this was a serious proposal of turning the suspension bridge into an amusement park.
Rick Rywey and Tall Stacks would all, you know,
Yeah.
don't show them that, they'll want to do it. Some of those early ones, one of the ones, of course, is Chester Park,
Yes.
which is was out on Spring Grove Avenue.
Yes.
But another one, and I grew up in northern Kentucky, was the Ludlow Lagoon, and we've
Yes.
got some scenes from that we can show as well. What was Ludlow Lagoon like?
Well, Ludlow Lagoon, and as all the other amusement parks, were amazing. It was amazing because what they did was they just took some property, land, and they dammed up a creek. They made this large lake in Ludlow. It's just on the border of Ludlow, between Ludlow and Bromley. And water was very important for amusement parks, so they made this lake, and then they built the amusements around the lake, but everything concentrated on this lake. I would say at the deepest, maybe the lake was 15 feet, 20 feet at the deepest. A lot of it was probably around 3 to 4 feet deep.
Yeah. Growing up, that's where we went ice skating because it froze so quick.
Yes.
Now, with Coney Island versus Kings Island, I mean, what's the difference? What's the difference between sort of the complex of amusement parks that existed for earlier generations and sort of now the single big fancy corporate park? What do you think the impact of that is?
Well, I think that the amusement parks today, and Kings Island included, are trying to attract people from a much more distant area and trying to draw in people from all over the Midwest at least, and make it a total experience for a vacation. Coney Island was very good, but it was a little more close to home. In other words, it was close in geographic terms, but it was closer to our feelings, I think, in a lot of ways. In other words, it was more familiar, and it was someplace that you know, you went for a lot of family occasions. That's the only place where my grandmothers, both of my grandmothers, went together with us because we picnicked and then we went on the rides, and they played cards in the pavilion, and then we ran out in the mall and rode all the rides.
Aside from that personal rediscovery of Coney, which I'm sure went into this book, and personal memories, what is it that most intrigued you about what you did run across in your research here about maybe some of the other parks?
Well, you see, first of all, that Chester and Coney and Ludlow Lagoon and the zoo's included in this book, and they're all competing for customers, and they're all interested in being on the edge, on this technological edge, because as, for instance, hot air balloons were a big thing in the late 19th century. They all had hot air balloon ascensions. And then they had, it wasn't enough just to have the balloon to go up, they had somebody jumping out of the balloon by a parachute, and the parachute was fairly new. Then they'd have somebody supposedly shot from a cannon suspended by the hot air balloon. I believe it was some type of lightweight device with powder in it, but it looked like they were shot out of a balloon or out of a cannon from the balloon. Then bicycles. Bicycles were new in the 19th century, and they made a big deal out of bicycles. Chester Park had a big bicycle racetrack, which used to be the old horse racetrack when it was a racetrack. And then Coney had bicycles. They all had events for bicyclers. Bicyclers were like a different class of people for a while, and it was a craze. And they're all on the edge of these crazes. And then automobiles. Automobiles come up, and automobiles a new invention, and they have automobiles first just on display, and then you can take a ride in an automobile, and then the automobile becomes the way to get to the park.
We could also say that right now with someplace like Disney World, with all of the animatronics and all of the new technology
Right.
today that you can see, the
Right.
3D stuff. I want to make sure that people know where to find this. Bob Wimberg's Amusement Parks of Greater Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky is available at the Ohio Bookstore on Main Street downtown. Also going to be available at Joseph Beth and at the Museum Center. Bob, thank you. One more addition that you've made to understanding our city. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, the looming constitutional crisis facing Ohio over the issue of funding public schools. We leave you this morning with some less troubling scenes from Old Coney. Have a good week.